Well, Henry Ford once said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether at 20 or at 80. Yet anyone who keeps learning stays young. The greatest thing in life is to keep your mind young. Thus, the pursuit should always be of improvement, of being a better person, and of being a more learned person. And that pursuit has to be relentless. Hello, everyone. You're watching the Virtual Amicus, and I'm Jay Lodha. Well, today's topic for discussion would be on spearheading the advocacy training course for junior lawyers and how some speakers there, some brilliant lawyers there, started the same and replicated the same model at the Hon'ble Bombay High Court. And joining us today on the Virtual Amicus is somebody who needs absolutely no formal introduction. She did her master's from Columbia Law School, did her LB from GLC Mumbai. So today we are joined by Miss Namrata Shah. And just to give you all a brief introduction about our amicus for today's session, Namrata is a partner designate at Rashmi Kant and Partners. She practices commercial arbitration and litigation in Mumbai. She studied literature and political science at St. Xavier's before going to Government Law College. She began her career as a junior in Mr. Dryas Khambata's chamber, and he encouraged her to pursue an LLM in the United States. After graduating from Columbia Law School, she spent a year working at Pepper Hamilton in Philadelphia and moved to firm practice at Federal and Rashmikant, where she returned to India. She's currently serving on the Arbitration Pledge's Young Practitioner Subcommittee, which advocates for gender diversity in international arbitration, and was a regional representative at the LCIA's Young International Arbitration Group. In 2019, with support from the International Advocacy Training Council and Bombay Bar Association, she founded the Advocacy Training course that is run at the Bombay High Court. The course is the first of its kind in India, and she's also a partner designate with Rashmikant and Partners. Wow, what an introduction. Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time and for really saying yes, for doing a session on this really very important and a breakthrough course that you are conducting and spearheading. Anything that you wish to say about our channel before we move with our Q&A section?
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure to be having this discussion with you. I was watching all your videos a few weeks ago, and I kind of binge watched through quite a few of them. But thank you for the amazing work you're doing. Actually, it's just so helpful to have somebody kind of break down cases, have these discussions. I wish I had these resources when I was applying for my LLM and when I was in law school. It's just so helpful to have that. And I think even as a practicing lawyer, I think I find tremendous value in some of your discussions that you have on judgments and new case law. It's just tremendously amazing work.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for all the kind words. Can't wait. Let's quickly start with our Q&A segment. So, question number one coming your way. Where exactly is this organization called the International Advocacy Training Council registered? And what is the aim and purpose of this organization?
So the IATC is a non-profit organization. It's registered in Hong Kong. And currently, the chairman of the IATC is a Malaysian lawyer named Brendan Naveen Siva. So broadly, the IATC has presence across Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, the UK, and South Africa, all common law countries. And what they do is they work with local bar associations to help them set up these courses where you can teach oral advocacy to junior lawyers. So in many common law jurisdictions, it's very normal to have this as a rite of passage to become a practicing lawyer, where you have to undertake a certain number of hours of training in oral advocacy skills, because that's a large part of what we do. And then you get your license to practice. So in India, we don't have that. And that's something that they work on in several jurisdictions. I think they've recently been working in Dubai. They've been working with, I think, the Maldives. They had also tried training the lawyers there to set up the course with them. So wherever you have common law and this system of running trials, it's broadly the same structure in all these countries. And so they work with different associations in these countries and they set up the course free of charge and at their own expense. So they fly down trainers at their expense. Each of these trainers are senior practicing lawyers who make the time, spend the money. They will come down to your jurisdiction and help to train the faculty in the local jurisdiction that they're working with.
Wow. So is it so that the trainers have to themselves receive some formal training before they impart the same in their respective Constitutional Court?
Yes. So the thing about the IATC and what I love about them is that they're very respectful of the local jurisdiction. So they believe that your senior lawyers are the best place to teach your junior lawyers because they know the court system, they know how you work, and so their job is to equip our senior lawyers to be able to teach. So all that they impart is this teaching method or the teaching skill. They don't actually teach the substance of it. So they will not teach us how to conduct a cross examination. They will teach our senior lawyers how to teach this skill. And so that's actually something that I find very unique to them is that they don't try to interfere in the way you train your junior lawyers. They will only give you this method that works across jurisdictions. It's a very simple 6-step method, and it's kind of there are 2 steps to it. One is that they will teach your senior lawyers how to teach, and then the senior lawyers can take the course forward and conduct it for juniors in the local jurisdiction.
So do they also teach or the sitting judges there, or is it only senior counsels or partners of law firms that are?
So, yeah, so I think that the ideal profile of a student, I mean, what I mean, the ideal profile of a trainee teacher is somebody who's a little younger, so about, say, 15 years in practice, not a designated senior, because I think the primary skill they look for is patience and the willingness to teach and the ability to relate to the student. And so, for many senior lawyers, they work at a level where they can no longer relate to somebody who's a raw junior who's just graduated. And so, they train the faculty, and a lot of their current faculty, these courses have started decades or at least a decade ago in some jurisdictions. And so, the faculty that must have trained is now well into seniority. And so, many of them become judges while they are still trainers and they continue doing the training. So in many jurisdictions, it's very common for judges to also be teaching. And I find that quite interesting because they'll be sitting judges, but they are ultimately the consumers of our advocacy, right? Or not consumers, but the recipients of advocacy. And so they are the ones who are best placed to tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And it's interesting to get that perspective when you have a judge who's also a trainer and who's doing the teaching.
So basically, the whole idea and objective is to impart training vis-a-vis with respect to advocacy and not drafting, settling of drafts, etc.
Yeah.
How to
So
present cases in the court, basically.
right. So to make a start at the Bombay High Court, we've only started with the oral advocacy course, and it's the very basic oral advocacy course. But in many jurisdictions, you have written advocacy as well, which works in the same hands-on way where they teach written advocacy. You have a more advanced level of teaching for example, at Oxford, they have an advanced advocacy training, and so the students there will also be people with many years of practice. And so you need to be significantly senior to be able to teach those students. And then they have expert witness handling. So there are various versions and variations. They'll have the criminal side advocacy, which is different from civil side, arbitration advocacy. And so all of these they're ultimately sort of tailor made to those situations, but the broad structure remains the same. It'll still be this 6-step method where you give one teaching point. I'll come to the method in a bit because it's just a very structured way of teaching oral advocacy. And then when you come to written advocacy, they apply the same method.
Now, you did mention about the method. Any particular method that they use or utilize?
Yeah. So the method was developed by it's called the Hon'ble method because it was developed by a QC named George Hon'ble. And so it's a 6-step method. Basically, how it works is you'll be in a courtroom. So we do it in the Bombay High Court in the actual courtrooms that are used by judges. It'll be done over 3 days. And so on the first day, the students who have been given study material in advance will work with the trainers and just break down the study material. They'll discuss the life cycle of a trial, right from the time the client walks in through the door to the time you file pleadings, issues are framed, you lead evidence, and you get to final arguments. So we just give students an overview of that. And then on the next week after that, so we have this first short session, then you give them a week to absorb that material, to prepare for the next weekend. And then on a Saturday and Sunday, when the court is empty, we use the courtroom. Each student will come up to where a lawyer would actually be addressing a judge. They stand and address somebody who's playing a judge. Um, and they play their part. So supposing they're doing examination in chief of a witness, for a few minutes they'll play their part, and the trainer will be sitting next to them and taking detailed notes. After the student is done, the trainer will stand up next to them. So you're both standing as if you would be addressing a court, and the trainer will give the student only one teaching point. So it's easy to absorb that one point, that okay, this is my one practical tip to you. And then they'll explain to the student why they're giving them this practical tip, and they'll offer a remedy that they apply in their own practice. So it's very hands-on. You're getting advice from someone who has practical experience, and they're giving you some advice that they use and that has been effective for them also. And then they'll demonstrate it to you. So they'll say, okay, this is how I would do it. So you're standing next to an experienced practitioner who's using your words and your material and showing you how they would use the same material. And then you have a chance to do it again. So the lesson really stays with you, because now you have this one practical tip and you're able to apply it and see how you can work with it, because you have a chance to do your performance again. So those are the 6 steps of the teaching method.
Wow, that is quite rigorous. So coming to, imparting training to these senior advocates, is there a particular criteria that we will be imparting training to a particular category of seniors, or do they approach seniors, or seniors have to apply for this for the purposes of getting trained from these international experts?
So when we started this back in this whole thing had started as a conversation in 2016, but back in 2019, when Brendan and my friend Shan, who introduced me to this whole course, he's a Malaysian lawyer as well. They came down to Bombay and they spoke to the Bar Association committee. And I think at that time it was a very new concept. And we were also kind of trying it out, running it as a pilot. And so it took up until 2021 to kind of get things moving. And I must have made at least, I think, over 100 phone calls to people to ask if they'd be interested. And these would be, I mean, when we did it, I was significantly more junior in the profession than I am now. And so I would be cold calling these senior lawyers and senior practitioners and telling them, this is what we're planning to do. Are you interested? And many of them, like Naushad Engineer, Farhan Dubash, Gautam Ankhad, they were on board from the first day. They said, yes, this sounds like a great idea, and they believed in it. And then the more you get people involved, the more they start to put the word out. They start to get other people involved. And so, since it was a pilot, there was no formal application process. It was more just on the basis of me making inquiries with people, and then other people suggesting other people who'd be interested. And then, of course, the primary thing is the willingness to make the time commitment, because all these people are very busy. So the main thing is that, do they care enough to commit these 3 days of time, to make the effort, to make the time, to give up conferences, to give up urgent matters, to give up all of that, to be there, because the whole thing requires so much planning and logistics. And so it really just sort of happened on the basis of word of mouth. And we ran the pilot course in 2021. And then it started to spread from there, because people saw the value in it. They saw how, they saw how it helps them to become better lawyers as well, in addition to giving back to the profession. And then the message sort of went out, word got out. So that's kind of how we did it. The criteria, though, was a certain level of experience. You do need experienced lawyers. So you definitely need people with 10 years of experience. I managed to get trained, even though I was, I think, about 8 or 9 years in, I think, because I was organizing it. And so they said, if you're doing it, just do the training. What you do later with that information is up to you, but get trained. But the cutoff, I think, you'd at least need 10 years of experience to be able to give that kind of practical life experience to somebody who's just starting out.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am. So, another question, who all can attend this? Is it open for all the members of the bar? Is it specifically only for younger members of the bar? And if yes, then is there any particular enrollment fee for this course, or is it pro bono, the one that is
So
offered in Bombay? Yeah.
right. So I think that our president of the BBA has very strongly felt, and a lot of the members of the BBA have strongly felt that um, you want to make it accessible to people. And so for many lawyers who may not be part of firms, who might be just starting out, a fee that is too high is too much. And so what they do is they take a deposit, because you need to hold people to that commitment, right? If something is free, you can sign up and not show up, and that happens so often on webinars. So they take a deposit of 2,000 rupees, and if somebody completes all 3 days of the course, that deposit is returned with their certificate. So as such, it's a free of charge course. And if you obviously, if you don't keep your commitment, then you forfeit your deposit. But to make it accessible, Nitin Bhai and Vishal Kanade, who helped to really get this off the ground, they were very clear, and a lot of the BBA members felt that they wanted to keep it accessible. But of course, over time, whether that's sustainable or not, I mean, that's ultimately a call for each organization to take. But I think it's a good initiative that they're keeping it accessible to everybody. As long as you keep your commitment, it's free. To enroll, so about your question about enrolling, they send out there's a form that goes out whenever we're running the course, and people with I think about recently graduated to about 5 years of experience can enroll. The reason why we don't have it for more senior people is, number one, is that our faculty is also still very new to this. So it's still a learning process for us, even though they're senior lawyers and they're seasoned lawyers themselves. It's still a process that we are also getting the hang of. And so you don't want very senior people to whom you may not be able to add value. Secondly, the study material is also very basic. So it would be too elementary for somebody with more years of experience. And of course, we also don't have students, because you want someone who's seen court a little bit to get the most value from the course. So you have recent graduates till about 5 years of experience.
So, ma'am, is Bombay Bar Association the only association in the country that is doing this in collaboration with the International Advocacy Training
Yeah.
Council, or is there any
Yes.
other? Are you aware of any other association?
No, I think that I had heard that they had tried doing it in Delhi as a one-off thing. And I think even the BBA had thought that this would be a one-off thing. It may not take off. And thankfully, I had Brendan and Shan to just kind of tenaciously stay with it and make sure that nobody gave up on it. And so I think this is the only bar association that regularly runs the course in the country. And hopefully it's such a valuable thing. I really hope that more associations pick it up, and I hope that more people start doing it, because it makes a huge difference to the juniors.
No, actually, kudos to you and your entire team and the entire bar there, for this incredible initiative, doing this for the younger members of the bar to train them. Because obviously, we never had this as a course or as a subject, the art of
Yeah,
advocacy in law
yeah,
school, and something that cannot be taught. But when a senior advocate is coming in, sharing his experiences and teaching us these skills of how to make submissions in an interim application or how to argue a final
absolutely,
hearing matter, then it really helps. So I'm sure
absolutely.
it will prove to be very helpful. So and lastly, has it personally helped you in your advocacy journey, in your litigation stint so
Oh,
far?
of course. So, I've always had a little bit of squeamishness about public speaking, and more so when I became a lawyer, because the stakes are so much higher. I mean, it's one thing to speak in a moot, but real life lawyering and real life court appearances are quite different. And so, I think the other thing also is that in our system, where we kind of think that, when we see senior counsels coming and arguing, they make it look so effortless that it looks as if this is a skill you're either born with, you either have it or you don't. But it's very much a skill that you can learn. And I only realized that when I was doing the LLM, there were classes on trial advocacy where you see, people being taught advocacy in a very systematic and organized way. It's not just by observation, it's by doing also. And the other thing is that I saw that in the US, it's very common for, if you have a big argument in the Supreme Court, it's very common for them to practice their arguments beforehand. It's not as if they just show up in court and argue. And so the firm that I was working at, they had a conference room set up where it was set up like a courtroom, and you could practice addressing a judge and you could get a feel of things. They would invite other people to come and ask you questions as if they are the judge to practice sharpening your arguments and what you're going to say in court. Um, and in fact, even when I came back, I had started asking around about joining a public speaking coach or something. And everybody was so reluctant to say that this is something they want to do. They say, but I don't need a public speaking coach. And then I spoke to my the partner who had hired me in the US, and he said, oh, that's so great. Even I have a public speaking coach, and this is somebody who has 25, 30 years of experience and who still works with a coach, because it's still very much something that you don't have to just wake up and have this skill. You can very much work on it and learn it. And it's not as if we keep telling ourselves that, oh, I'll argue in court when I'm ready someday. But you're not going to wake up and be ready one day, right? Confidence doesn't work that way. It comes from doing things over and over again. And so the first time I did it, I was terrified. And I still don't enjoy it until it's over and then the adrenaline rush kicks in. But I think that doing this has just made me understand the concepts of trial in a very real way when you have to teach it to somebody, because then you have to really question why you do the things you do. And after a point, these things become so second nature, you don't think of why you're doing them. So until you're not breaking it down and explaining it to somebody else, you don't even realize it. And the other thing is that in February, when we ran the course, we also included this video review segment where you take a video on the student's phone itself, so only they have the video, and they sit with a trainer in the other room and they go through the video and they get feedback on body language, on how they present their case, and also on the teaching point, so that the teaching point really stays with them. And in many jurisdictions, they'll have actors to come and train you on body language also. And these are things that we don't think we need to make a deliberate effort to do. It's sort of assumed as you stand in court, you observe what people are doing, you don't need to actually learn it, and you just pick it up. But then in that just pick it up, the people who have good mentors and who have access to uh, that kind of mentorship will pick it up. But not everybody has that kind of access. And so I think it's important to make this kind of knowledge available more widely.
Wow. So, ma'am, now that we've approached the end of our segment, anything that you wish to say as parting words before we wrap this segment? Any
Uh,
advice for young law students, lawyers?
I think okay, advice. I was just reflecting back on, I think, on what I've learned from this. And I think it's that in 2016, when I had a conversation with my friend and he told me about this, I had written it down as this long distant goal that I needed to try and accomplish someday in my life. And it seemed like this thing that was so far away. But I think that what it's given me is the capacity to believe that something that seems impossible, if you just are tenacious and follow through on it, it can actually happen. And um, I think that a lot of what we do in law can be a bit of drudgery, and often I feel like people feel burnt out. But I think that if you remember what gives you meaning in what you do, I think it really kind of helps through the challenging time. And so for me, I think it's all the challenges have been worth it when those students come up to me and say that they learned something and they walked away with a lesson that they couldn't have found elsewhere. And then all the hard work is worth it.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am, for taking out time and for doing this session for us. To all the
Thank you.
viewers who are watching, I'm sure this segment must have immensely benefited you, especially the insights that ma'am shared on the virtual amicus, discussing this advocacy training program. It's one of its kind initiative introduced by ma'am and her team with the help of the Bombay Bar Association and in association with the International Advocacy Training Council. So to all the viewers who are watching, in case if you have any queries, feel free to write to us we'll be more than happy to forward the same to our micers for today's session. So thank you so much for watching. It's goodbye for now. Thank you once.
Thank you. Thanks so much.